What's up, folks? Today we're going to be installing the top board for the PKE meter from MSH Design Studios. Let's get started. Alright, folks. Welcome back. It's been a while since I've done a tutorial. Life has happened, and there's been quite a few things that have happened just within my family the last couple months or so, and I'm getting over a cold, so bear with me. I'll probably be clearing my throat a lot, but we'll get through it. All right, so for today, you'll need 5 or 6 things here. Obviously, your top board PCB, which you can get on my website. We've got 3 red LEDs. In the kit, you'll get 2 switches. You only need 1 of them today. And then we've got 4 220 ohm resistors. And then you have your yellow and green LED. Then for the touch sensors, you'll need a bit of wire. I included these in my kit. This is 18 gauge wire, and it's just jewelry wire. It's nothing fancy. You can get an entire spool of it on Amazon for pretty cheap. And then you need your top 3D printed piece. This is an older one that I made. The good thing about the top board is it doesn't matter which version of the PKE you've printed from MSH Design Studio. This is an older one, but I have some of the newer ones printed out as well. I'll be using this as an example because my new one is actually outside drying. I printed it and it's being primed and painted right now. So I'll use this one as an example just for the time being until we actually get into the installation part. Okay, so let's look at the top board here. You'll see that this says this side up right here and this side facing inside. And that means that if you're looking at the PKE meter, this is the inside. So this is the inside, this side is facing up. So just like that. And the reason for that is when you install, I figured this out, that when you install the resistors on this, if you put them on the side facing up, the resistors create a little bit of a gap in between the 3D printed part and the board. And what you want this to sit as close up into the 3D printed part as you can. All right, so this is the side facing inside. You want to put the resistors here. The LEDs, you have 3 red LEDs. There's one that goes here, and they'll actually be, the LEDs will be on this side. And then there's a red LED here. Then you have a green and a yellow LED. These designate which pattern you're using. You have a switch that connects here. There's a center pattern or center pin. And all that switch does is changes the ground from being on the ground A side or ground B side. And the pattern board that you've probably already completed, this connects here. And then the switch connects here. So all this is doing is really connecting the ground to this side or connecting the ground to this side. All right, so, and then you have the touch sensors down here. You have button 1, button 2, button 1, button 2. Whenever you touch this button, this red LED will light up. Whenever you touch this button, this red LED will light up. And then you have these wires go to the main board. And I'll show you what I did. This is the prototype again. I actually used header pins, 90-degree angle header pins, and I bent them up more at an angle so I could get the DuPont connector on and off. This is actually the prototype right here that I did. You can see I've got a DuPont connector right there. This wire is entirely too stiff to use, so this is a pre-wired ribbon cable. I do not recommend doing that. If you do, this needs to be much shorter, and it also needs to be out of something like silicone wire, so it's a lot more flexible. You can see this is basically was crammed inside the PKE, and it's just too much wire. So you can use the DuPont connectors, or you can wire directly to the top board and the main board. You know, your preference. They're going to do the same thing. But personally, I think I will probably just wire it directly. If you have to take them apart to do any work, they're just kind of sit like this. It is kind of nice to be able to disconnect one side or the other if you need to do maintenance on it. The other thing that I'll mention is that once you get the top board installed in this, it is pretty much impossible to gain access to the components on the other side of the board. As you can see, it's basically installed directly into this, and you can't remove it because these touch sensors right here are wired and soldered directly into the top board. So you won't be able to remove the top board once this is finalized. I think that's it though. I think that's all of it. So what we're going to do is we're going to solder the resistors onto this board now. So make sure that you're doing this on the side that says this side facing inside right there. The resistors want to go on that side. And like always, I've got my 0.3 millimeter solder, tip tenor, and my soldering iron and nippers. So let's get this part done. Just drop a resistor. Alrighty, let's see if you can see that. Doesn't matter which way these go in. So it's not like the diode that's on the main board. It doesn't matter. It doesn't have a polarity or anything. So you can just put them in either way, as long as you make sure that it's on the side facing inside. And it's not the end of the world if you make that mistake or accident. You can see on the prototype that I did that I actually put them on the other side, but then there's a gap. There's a gap right in there between the board and the 3D printed part because of that. So it's much nicer when you have them on the inside. So I've sold quite a few kits, and I've sold, you know, board, some of the board bundles, that's, you know, all the boards together. I've gotten a lot of messages from people, you know, saying how much they liked them, how much they like the design of them, that it has definitely made things easier. So thank you. I appreciate the feedback. I've gotten some really good comments from people on maybe other ways to do things, which is great. You know, I would encourage you to post those on the Pixel Prop Store Facebook page, so that other people can see. And if I end up using, you know, one of those tips or something, I'll absolutely give you credit for it. I'm all about giving credit. where credit is due. Doesn't take much. I cannot emphasize enough not to use huge solder. It's much, much easier. These soldering pads are very small, and if you put a ton of solder on it, you're gonna end up with a short before you know it. That's it. All right. All right, so we've got the resistors right there on the board, and now we can clip these off on the other side. Okay, so that's done. You can see those are installed. And just to explain, these resistors are for the LEDs that are on the board. Let's see, there are 4, but there are 5 LEDs. That's because the red LEDs, those are on, those can be triggered and are on all the time. The green and yellow LEDs, only one of those is lit up at a time. So you don't need 5 resistors, you really only need 4 because the green and yellow aren't on at the same time. So the next part, I need to go get my my other shell part that I've painted, so I'll be right. That 3D printed part, it's not going to be dry. Paint's not going to be dry today, so I mean it might be, but it'll be later on the day. So so that we can stick with the program and get this tutorial done, I ripped the top board out of an older one that I made, and we'll just use this one. So what we're going to do now is the top, the switch for the top board. Yeah, there it is. All right. So this is the switch, you can see, and it's got too many prongs on the bottom of it. So this one right here, this one next to last, this one right there. I don't even know if you can see that. This one, these sets right here. You can clip those off just so you're not confused. One thing that I'll say is that this switch is very temperamental. Do not leave your soldering iron on it too long, or what will happen is when you go to switch it, the ground won't connect properly and that light won't show up or light up, and it's possible that the when you go to switch the pattern on the PKE, it won't switch properly. So what I usually do is I put the wire all the way through. There's these little holes you can see. There's these little holes on the side of those pins. See if you can see. Yeah, little holes on the side of those pins right there. And what I do is I put the wire through those holes, and then on the other side I put just a little bit of solder on those, so that makes good contact. and also minimizes my soldering iron's exposure to the pins. So I've got 3 colored wires here. Doesn't matter what color you use. I've got black, blue, and green. You can use all black. You can use all green or all blue, whatever. But since the center pin is is coming from the top board ground, I usually do the ground, the black wire, signifying the ground for that one. So what I usually do is thread that through and bend it up, so you can see, just like that. And we're gonna put just a little bit of solder on that end part. What you can do is actually put solder on the soldering iron. See how fast I did that? You just want to, put solder on the soldering iron and just touch it to that. And that's it. That's all you need to do. You don't really need any more solder than that. Just make sure it's connected really well. It's touching. That's enough. So we'll do the other ones. What you don't want to happen is you don't want this switch to go bad and you have to rip the top board out, because then you'll have to redo all your touch sensors as well. Let's see. Just a little bit more wire here. The Star Wars cup. When it's hot, all the lightsabers light up. It's pretty cool. Okay, so one more time. Put a little solder on this. And I'm just gonna okay. And the last wire. Same process. Again, this is just to minimize the soldering iron's contact with the switch, because that can definitely fry this switch and it won't work. I've had it happen on a couple, and it is not fun to fix, especially after you've gotten your PKE together. Only then do you find out that the switch doesn't work, and you have to rip the whole thing apart. Okay, switch is good to go. You've got 3 wires there connected to it. Just want to give those a tug, make sure they're all good to go. Looks like they are. Clean this up just a little bit. Make sure there's no stray wires hanging off of it. Okay. All right. So now we're gonna actually put this in the the PKE. It doesn't really matter which way you put it, but you can see the switch really sticks up very minimally on the top there. It's not much showing. Alright, we're going to install the switch into the shell, and what we want to do, I use E6000, I use it for a lot of stuff. My entire Stormtrooper armor is put together with this stuff, but you want to put a little bit right on the edges of the switch here and here, and we're just going to drop that right into the PKE shell. And you can see the switch doesn't really stick up off the top very much. Yeah, that's it right there. Do you want to just press that in a little bit? All right. While that's drying, we will get the LEDs for the top board. You've got green LED, red LED, yellow LED, and the two red ones right there. You want to make sure that you install the LEDs on the side that says this side up. And what you can go ahead and do is just go ahead and feed the LEDs into all of the corresponding holes. Make sure that the longer wire is going through the positive and the shorter one's going through the negative. There's a little flat part right there on the LED. You can go ahead and get the LED fed through up to that, because usually it will it'll sit that far off the top board. And then what we'll do is we'll fit this into the shell, and you're going to solder this directly in the shell, and that's just to assure that the LEDs are the correct space and the correct length. Alright, let's see. You can put the board in there. You have to flip it over, and you'll have to look through the LED holes here, and just kind of, you can see the LEDs through there, so you just need to kind of feed them through very gently, too. Don't force anything, but they should line up pretty well. Yeah, just like that. So all the LEDs are fed through. See them. We want to make sure that we press the top board down as far as we can. And one more time, make sure that these resistors are on the inside. I didn't think the switch stuck up that much, but I guess it does. Probably is a way that I could have made that switch meet the top board, perfectly, but not a big deal. Okay, just make sure that all of those are pushed down into the top board, and you want to bend the wires, bend the leads up a little bit just to keep those in place. The LED should stick up off of the shell just a little bit. And this is one of the few times that you have to solder something directly in the shell. I don't recommend that normally, because you might melt your shell, which I've done on a number of occasions. Let's turn this one down so maybe you can see that just a little bit better. All right. So those are all in now. You can actually pull the top board out if you want. You can see that's as far as off as they're going to need to be from the top board. And you can go ahead and clip all these wires off on the bottom. Okay. So you're about halfway done with the top board now. It's pretty simple. We have the switch left, and we have the touch sensors, and that's going to be it. I gotta go get my kids off the bus now, so I'll be back in a little bit.
A few minutes later.
Okay, so now we have to connect the top board to the switch. Hopefully your glue's dry. It's pretty simple. You've got 3 holes here, and they're labeled switch. You want the this is what it looks like with the switch installed here. You want the center one to go in the center switch hole. Yeah, basically mirror exactly what you've got in the PKE. So I've got the ends of these stripped. We're going to just feed these through on this side. I'm going to feed these through and then solder them in. Pretty simple. Get some straight wires here. Still some straight wires. Now I'm using 30 gauge wire for that switch wires, but to be honest, you could use 28. That 28 is probably actually a little bit better because these holes for the switch wires are a little big. And the last wire. I don't know if you can hear my kids upstairs singing. Okay. All right, so now the top board is officially connected to the switch. And what we're going to do now is we're going to really the last thing to do is just feed the touch sensors through. So we're going to feed the LEDs back through and be very gentle. You shouldn't have to do much. It should just slide right into place. Yep, pop right in. Once you get those LEDs kind of set the way that they're supposed to, it just kind of pops in and out of the shell. So now we have to run our touch sensor wire through the shell, through the top board, and then solder it on the back. And this is arguably one of the most annoying parts of this build, because it is kind of difficult to fish these through. There's a number of ways you can do this. You can use a smaller gauge wire. So this is 18 gauge, and in the kit I sent enough wire to do it the way that I'm going to show you, which is the easy way. If you had smaller gauge wire, you could pretty much just kind of weave it through and go back through and kind of go just like you're sewing. But this way, the way that I'm going to show you is a little easier. It's a little less time consuming, and it still looks good. So the wire that I sent in the kit is roughly it's roughly about that long, and it's 18 gauge, as I said. What I usually do is I sand just the part that I cut a little bit, and then what you want to do is you want to make a little bit of a crook like that. And I usually use needle nose pliers to hold it like that. Let's see, hold it like this, and make a little flat part on the top. Now the reason that one end is longer than the other is because this end's actually going to go all the way through the top board, and that's going to be what you solder, and then you can clip this off. Now this is going to hook over the shell and go in through the other hole, and it's actually not going to make contact with the top board at all. It is very, very hard to get these to go all the way through on both sides to the top board to solder it. If you can do that, if you want to try to spend your time, poking this through, trying to get those through, that's fine. I'm really just showing you how to save a little time and make it a little bit easier on you. And I can't really send all the wire in the world to really weave these and sew them like you can do. So I'm trying to save a little bit of wire as well in the kit. But this is definitely the easier way to do it. So I'm going to start with this top one on the left if you're looking at the PKE. So what I'm going to do here is just kind of thread this through, and if you look on the inside of the PKE, you can see, you should be able to see, yep, see, you can see it coming through right there. Pretty easy to thread that first one through. And if you can get it, wiggle it a little bit and get it all the way through, you can see this other side is lined up perfectly. And all I need to do is get some needle nose pliers and pull that a little bit. Let's see, that's seated in there the right way. Looks good. Okay, so the first one's done. That's all you need to do. It doesn't have to go through both of those holes. It really only has to go through one of them. And actually, you don't even need both the top and the bottom. You just need one of them. Okay, so that's what it looks like right here. And that's what it looks like on the inside. See, it's sticking up right there. All right, so I'm going to do another one just like that. Alright, so we got a piece of wire about that long, and I'm gonna use my needle nose pliers about right there, bend this side up, bend this side down. I guess they're both up. And you can trim this side a little bit. Doesn't need to be too long. It just needs to hook onto the other side. You want to make sure that the wire is straight as well. And hit this with a piece of sandpaper. Alright, so we've done that one. I'm going to actually flip this one around and do the other side. So you're going to have to fish this through. I can see it. And try really hard not to misshape your wire. If it doesn't go very easily, then try going to a different one. Try to keep the wire as straight as you can. You could also use paperclip for this. Paperclip's not a bad gauge. Got some of those laying around. I think this wire is just a little bit misshapen from when I cut it, so there it goes. So you kind of have to spin it a little bit just to really get it in. So once you get it through, you can pull it a little bit with your needle nose pliers, and don't forget on the top you got to feed that other side through. All right. Oop. There. Looks good. So now you got both the touch sensors in, the top ones, and you can see on the inside, they're right there. So since we got those two in, what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and solder those, and that's going to give the top board just a little bit of more sturdiness, because right now I'm having to hold the top board in when I feed these through. Alright, so we got our solder. Let me get some drink of tea here. And we're just gonna put some solder on that. Actually, what you can do is bend these down just a little bit. Be able to see them just a little bit better. Definitely want to make sure that these touch sensors have really good soldering joints, solder joints on them, because if the PKE doesn't detect that you've touched it, then it's not going to work at all.
Later that same evening.
I had to get some coffee. All right, so we need to put the rest of the touch sensors in. We've got 2 in, we've got 2 more to do up here, and we've got 4 to do down there. So I went ahead and pre-made a bunch of these little staples or crooks or whatever you want to call them. So let's go ahead and put the last 2 up here. All right, there we go. Just a little bit of force, but not much. Wiggle it a little bit on the other side. Make sure that's lined up before you pull it through, or otherwise it won't go through. Okay. Other touch sensors in now. So let's do the other one, and then we'll solder them. Now let me sand this first. It seemed to work out pretty good. So the way the touch sensor stuff works is there is I mean, if you own a Matty PKE meter, or if you have a Spirit PKE meter that would basically work the same, those have buttons. The actual movie prop didn't have buttons; it had touch sensors to it. That's why this has touch sensors. So the way the touch sensors work, or at least the way that I program these to work, uh, the Arduino measures the capacitance of your touch, basically how much electricity your finger, which is acting as the capacitor, which how it's measuring the capacitance of your finger there. And it takes, I think, 1,000 samples rapidly, and then uses those samples to determine whether or not it's being touched or not. And that prevents it from basically giving you a false positive. There are some Arduino capacitor libraries, but I found that those didn't really work. So I kind of combined a couple of things to make this work, and it seems to work really well. But it measures it measures the capacitance of your finger, and then it determines based on that sample that it took whether or not it is being touched or not. And if it's being touched, then it simply sends a 1 or a 0. 1 being that it's touched, 0 being that it's not touched. It sends a 1 or a 0 to the code that determines whether or not a button's pressed, essentially. That's about the easiest way that I can explain it. Hopefully that didn't sound like a bunch of garbage. There we go. Just want to make sure that those pins line up with the holes correctly. All right, should be able to just pull this in. There we go. There. Now we've got all 4 of those in. It's really good. Okay, now we're gonna bend these up a little bit. think that's good. Alright, so those are good to go. We're going to cut off that excess wire there. Just make sure that those solder joints are good, they look good. Okay, so the last step is these 4 places down here on the bottom. I probably will need to make a couple. So the way that we're going to do this is we're going to thread. You want to start with the top one. There's 4 holes. The top 2 are 1 and the bottom 2 are 1. You want to do the top one first on both sides. So we're going to thread this through, and these are pretty easy to go ahead and line up. Actually, this one, because I know this one fits. Go ahead and line that up. Okay, so that's in there like this. And then you're going to bend this up. You're going to probably have to measure it just a little bit. And you're going to want to bend bend this part of the wire down and put it into one of these buttonholes. There's 2, one for the top and one for the bottom. Doesn't matter what you do first. This needs to run into there, and then you'll solder it. So usually what I do is I'll bend the wire down, and just above the word button, that's where I'll cut it. I'll cut the wire. So let's see. So right there, I've cut that wire right above the word button. And then you're going to bend that wire down into one of those holes. So this is a little tedious, but it can be done. Yeah, it's just the nature of building stuff like this. This is definitely where needle nose pliers comes in very handy. Perfect. So just like that. It doesn't have to look pretty. This is going to be visible. I know some people are like really, really crazy about being neat and perfect on the inside, but come on, I mean, no one's going to see this part. All it needs to do is fit into that hole, and then you can solder it. So we're going to do the other side now. And the wire end of that is usually it's about an inch before it gets to the part that bends. That part there, that's about an inch of worth of wire, and that's usually about enough. You should have enough with the wire that I sent with the kit to do it this way. If you're going to do it a different way, you're going to need more wire. If you bend up your wire, like here's a good example. This is for something else, but this wire is bent up. That's not going to work very well because these wires need to be pretty straight. See how straight that is? They need to be pretty straight to go through the top board. For the bottom part down here, this part right here doesn't need to really be that straight, and you can probably use that bent up wire for this, but pull that through, make sure it's seated really well out here. You might have to bend this just a little bit. Again, see this wire? I'm going to cut it right above the word button, and that's going to give me enough to bend down into those into the holes that I need to solder. You just want to use your needle nose pliers to just kind of feed it through that hole. Just like that. You're going to hear a little bit of a pop like that. Perfect. So we got those two put in. That's what they look like on the inside there. Fed right through there. And you need to push that wire down. Make sure there's no slack. Make sure it's up against the model and the top board as much as you can, because the potentiometer from the other side is going to sit right in here, right in this area. So you need to make sure that you've got these out of the way. You could even put a piece of tape, electrical tape, or even glue over that, just to make sure that this doesn't come in contact with anything else. They shouldn't, but you definitely don't want to take a chance there. Okay, so we'll go ahead and solder those two. I don't know if this one's going to fit or not. I might need to make another one. That'll fit. That'll work. So if you're watching these in the order that I've posted them, there's probably going to be 2 more videos. And it'll be like the final assembly. This is really the last video of actual board assembling and installation. I guess there's the main board installation, but that one's already got all the components and everything on it. Really all you're doing is kind of connecting everything to that board. But it's mostly done. Again, I would strongly suggest getting all of this working outside of the PKE before you install everything. Make sure you've got a working everything before you start putting all this in. The top board, you could get most of it tested. Like you can do the LEDs exactly like I did on here, then take the board out and then test it all. I'm pretty confident, and I've done all this right because I've done it a bunch of times. But you could do all of that and hold off on installing the touch sensors until you get everything else working and tested. And you don't even really need the touch sensors if you're testing everything. All you have to do is touch the part that says button 1, button 2. You just touch that and it'll work. You could also, on the main board, I have a main board here. On the main board, you can use a piece of wire to just touch the sensors down here that says BTN1, BTN2. So that's button 1, button 2. You can just use a piece of wire to touch those, and it will trigger everything. So there's that. So I'll have 2 more videos. Basically showing the final installation for everything, and hopefully I'll have my resin PKE model painted and ready for those. Yes, I hope to. And then got so many things I'm working on my side. I'm working on the ecto containment unit. That is going to be nuts. I'm thinking about putting servos on the side that open doors when you turn off the unit, like in the movie when the power's been cut off. It'll go through the cycle of like sounding like it's going to blow up, and then I'm going to have the part where Egon yells clear the building, and at that point I want these vents to open on the side, and I'm going to have smokers in it that blows smoke and lights up on the side to make it look like it's venting Ghost. kind of like it does in the movie. I've pretty much already coded all that stuff already, so I just need to actually build it now. That's the time-consuming part. I'm actually working on a lot of stuff for my kids for Christmas. Building a dollhouse castle for my daughter, which I need to start working on again. And eventually I want to build them scaled down proton packs too with my own code. That's another thing that I need to work on is my proton pack code. That is going to be pretty cool and different because I'm going to use a polyphonic soundboard, which means that it'll be able to play more than one sound at a time. They're a little pricey, but you know, I think it'll be really cool to have a startup sound and then actually use the power on sound, kind of like Ghostbusters 2 uses, I guess, or Afterlife, I guess. But I want those sounds. Like my pack right now, I'm using a Rabbit Prototypes soundboard. Basically, the sound that when you cut it on and the sound when you power the thrower on is the same sound, but I want those two to be different. But I want other sounds playing at the same time too. So that's the goal. And also have it do some other things too. Like I'll probably have it play, the soundtrack, but I like the idea of having the video game sounds on there, and I have probably used it all of one time. So I'm seriously considering not even having the video game sounds for like Messiaen Collider and all that stuff. The slime blower, like that's cool, but I've never used any of that stuff. So I'm not interested in really putting that in my pack, to be quite honest. It's cool, but I just don't, going out to events with Ghostbusters Virginia, I don't ever switch to those other sounds. Like most people that walk up, they know the proton pack, they know what it should sound like, they have a general idea of what it should sound like at least, and they don't care about anything else. Like if I had a slime blower, then I would be interested in having a slime blower sound, but not on a proton pack. I'm just not interested in it. So all right, last one here. Once again, cutting the wire right above the button, the word button. And we're going to bend that down. And then just feed it. Feed it down into that. Now, if you wanted to test these touch sensors, you'd have needed to, well, really all you have to do is, if you've got a main board that works, you just need to connect the wire between button 1 and button 2 to your main board, and that's it. That's all you need to do. So if you connect the wire to button 1 or button 2 from there to your main board, you can test these. Now, the lights won't turn on, but it will trigger the PKE. If you wanted to test everything, then you would have to connect all these wires, because the ground and all of these lights and things are all controlled from these wires too. So the next video we'll probably be installing the pattern board in here. The pattern board. Well, let me solder this first, and then we'll talk about that. I don't want to throw too much other stuff into this video, but I do want to explain this since it does kind of connect to the top board. Oops. All right. So that's what it looks like on the inside here. Not pretty, but it's, you know, it's not bad. Pretty minimal. Well, that's still warm. Okay. Yeah, so that looks pretty good. Now what I was telling you about the pattern board, which is right here. Pattern board. All right, so the pattern board is going to slide in from this side. I'm not gonna force it too much right now, but basically fits in from that side like that. Then you have, don't even worry about those. These wires connect to the main board, and what I usually do is, so these are this is silicone wire, so it's very flexible, but you can kind of twist these in a group, and I use really small zip ties to keep these kind of gathered together, and then I'll glue them right here, so that keeps them out of the way of the servo, keeps them out of the way of everything else, and then these wires are just going to basically connect to the main board right here. And so it sits kind of like that. You can see how those wires kind of sit there, so they stay out of the way of everything. Now the wires that you need to worry about for the top board are these two black wires, these right here. So these two black wires are the ground wires for the individual patterns. Now those are determined by the switch, and they're labeled. You've got ground A, and then you've got ground B. Ground B connects to the main board where it says pattern B. So obviously that wire needs to be trimmed, because this is a lot of extra wire. You don't need that much. It's really not even about an inch and a half or so. Inch and a half or 2 inches. Let's see. But basically that's what you've got. You've got so you've got pattern A going over here, and then pattern B going over here. And once those are connected, the switch right there will work, switching between those patterns. I think that's it. I think that's all you really need to know. Now, I've had some people comment about the way that I install this pattern, and so I install that a little bit differently than other people, but I'm using I'm basically just using the 3D printed part as a holder for the base of the LEDs. The LEDs aren't actually sitting in that piece. The pattern is really just kind of determined by the pattern board. It's not really I'm only using that 3D printed part to glue into the PKE. The slight issue that I've had with that is that when you install the acrylic part over that, it butts up against these LEDs just a little bit. So when that's installed, these LEDs get pushed back a little bit. So you may have to install that 3D printed part on the LEDs. If you did it the way that I do it, then you may have to push that pattern board and the 3D printed part back just a hair. And it's not going to be noticeable either way. Before you put that acrylic piece on, though, you do want to make sure that all your patterns are, lined up well. But I think that pretty much does it for the top board and the top board installation. As always, if anyone has any questions or even alternative ways of doing things, let me know. You can message me. Feel free to post on the Pixel Props Store Facebook page. But I think until I get around to the next two tutorials, which hopefully will be very soon, I guess I'll see you next time. This has been Jason Glisson for Pixel Prop Store, and I'll see you later.